Hello, thank you very much. Yeah, as you said, my name is Kasia Odrozek, and during the day I work for Mozilla. As many of you know, it's an organization and company behind the Firefox browser, but also with the mission to keep the internet open and accessible to all. There I work on publications and research investigating what we call internet health, and where we look at the interplay between internet and society, and where does the tech help us and where does it hurt us, what are the root causes, and who's actually doing something about it to better internet health. And it is this very mission-driven work, but also many other factors that led me to take on this volunteer role of a chapter lead of Berlin ZebrasUnite. And this is what I'll be talking to you about today. But I wanted to start with a little bit of a backstory. Okay, that was the slide, Mozilla and Zebras on the right. A little bit of the backstory. So before I joined Mozilla and after I finished my work at Wikimedia, I was I took a kind of a break, and between these two big open projects, I wanted to try out something new, and I wanted to get into business, and I wanted to run a business myself and see how it is. I wanted to see if I can be successful with it. So I joined a couple of friends in forming a startup. We wanted to revolutionize the podcasting world, empower niche publishers. We didn't want to run ads. We were super idealistic, and we felt like we had a purpose. And at the same time, we wanted to be actually a profitable business, and we wanted to make money, right? We wanted to be successful entrepreneurs. So it wasn't really like a non-profit. We wanted to be business people. And at first we bootstrapped our endeavor, but then at some points we of course realized that we need investment, we need more money to actually grow and to be able to present an alternative to what's already out there. And that was a very pivotal learning moment for me, because I started digging in what it actually means to take investor money, the VC investor money. It's usually, that was the path back then a couple of years ago, the only one. Because I always we always hear in the cultures like this shiny, this company got another Series A with like a lot of millions, and it's like incredible prestige and success. But I started actually to find out what does it mean to join an accelerator or get the money. And I understood that it is combined with immense pressure from investor on the founder and on the product decisions that you then, as you develop your company, that you need to start taking different product decisions. And these product decisions aren't yours anymore that much, or sometimes not at all, because they're being influenced a lot, as well as the culture of the company, by the people with power and money, who of course want a return on investment on the money they invested in you. So back then we thought, I don't know, we're not really sure if we want to do this and turn our lives into this and our products into this that we really like. So we started thinking, should we be a nonprofit or maybe a foundation? Should we look for other ways to do this? And back then there was really I couldn't find any resource or any alternatives, or I haven't heard about any other paths that are out there. And I wish that back then there was a movement like ZebrasUnite or many others that I will talk about today, where I could think like, okay, actually that sounds like something, how our path forward for our company. And I remember back then we went for a grant from Google, but that was also not ideal either, not because of what it was, but it was a grant, so it was not a really long-term investment. So that was kind of my personal into the startup world and understanding how it works. And I think when we look at how it works these days, one really begins to wonder, not even like having personal experiences, but also if you start listening to what's happening and to many founders out there, that there is this gap between this beautiful moment of wanting to change the world, wanting to improve something, solve a problem, and then the usual result that is a crazy run for an exit and an IPO, ideally they hope to become the next unicorn, and that always prioritizes growth and revenue over anything else and at any cost. And looking at it from the society perspective and the well-being of each one of us, we kind of ended up with problems created by many tech companies and others, and their business models, because their objectives are to maximize the profit, because this is what's being pushed by people with power and money. And we end up with solutions where companies exploit our data, don't protect our privacy, they lure us into dark UX patterns and rash algorithmic solutions that seem to do more harm than good, not to mention the environmental concerns or the well-being of employees and culture in the company. And it seems like the mission, and there's always a mission in the beginning, most founders have a mission, however it was at the start, it somehow takes a backseat to the revenue. And this model, of course, has been championed by the glorified Silicon Valley, but it spreads all around the world, also here in Germany and in Berlin. And I'm sure you know that, but the 99% of the companies that raise venture capital and never get to the fabled unicorn status of the $1 billion valuation, right? So investors actually they're hoping for the 1% chance to win the game, to get their money back, while our societies, our environment, and the many businesses itself are on the loser side. And of course, it's not hard. It's hard not to mention another elephant in the room, and this is the staggering lack of diversity in the startup world. And here I just copied a chart from an Atomic report in the State of European Tech for 2019 that I just found. I kind of knew, but I found it shocking. The numbers for Europe. I encourage you to explore this this report. It's really insightful in many ways, but especially the diversity part. And as you can see here, $92 in every $100 invested in Europe went to founding teams that were all men, and the founding for all women teams is actually going down. Then diversity is also racial diversity. 84% of all founders identified as white. 0.9% of all founders identified as Black, African, or Caribbean, and only 0.5% of all of these founders have raised external capital. And considering also that most investors are white men, I think it's clear that we have a problem of representation and bias, and whatever is conscious or not. And the innovation of today will shape our lives in the future. So obviously this needs fixing. Then of course, the recent COVID crisis shook up all of us, and the world of business took a hit. And although it's hard, and I don't want to speculate in uncertain times, but for me, it seems like pretty evident that sustainable growth, as opposed to artificially fueled growth at all costs, might be a better strategy to build a resilient economy. So if you don't hire 100 people without having a working business model, then maybe you won't have to fire them all once the investors turn away thinking about their own wallets. It also seems reasonable to build an economy targeted towards systemic wins around environment, community, and society, because this will create the environments that will actually support the economy of the future and the financial goals, long-term goals in the future too. And of course, it's better for us and for our children too. And here there's just I just discovered it recently. The city of Berlin put out the startup map for the city, and it's a really cool map, like listing a lot of startups. But the language that they're using here, so you can see it, you can go look for companies, and if you see like what they put focus on. Let's see that Berlin potential future unicorns, what they list is the launch day, valuation, funding, number of employees. There is not a word about sustainability in terms of environment or any other, and there is not a word about purpose, about the impact of societies, and so on. And of course, the definition of a startup is in our head is still the one that scales up really fast and brings innovation. But I think innovation, we need to start defining it a little bit of a broader way, because if this is supposed to be the main map, startups, for funders, for founders, funders, and everybody interested, that this is how, these are the factors that they're looking at and nothing else. And there's like one single mind path is just being cemented. To keep on my journey after my startup adventure, I went working for Mozilla, and I work on so-called Internet Health Report. As a publication when we started looking at the cause and effect of how tech impacts our well-beings. And this is a screenshot of a story. We told a lot of stories. We put this research together, we told stories, we interviewed people. And this is a screenshot of an interview I did with Nathan Schneider, who is the leader of a platform cooperatives movement in the US. And this interview, as you can see, the headline is kind of says a lot. What if Facebook were owned by its users? This interview made me realize even more that there is this systemic power imbalance encoded in the commercial world of tech that needs to be challenged. So we need to really start asking, and I think that's happening already, who's building for whom and what are the incentives at play? Because there is a power imbalance and accountability crisis between those who create value as users and those who make decisions today. And these are inseparable from the social challenges we're facing. So the question is, how do we create the right incentives that put people first in business? And we have civil groups and politicians, and they're increasingly calling and demanding regulation of tech and breaking up monopolies and whatnot. But this is not enough, I believe, because we need the world of business to change itself as well. But, you know, in the capitalist system, there's really very little wiggle room for people before profits approach, and unless this is by design. So in order to succeed, we need a design that would not just count on founders' good intentions, because this will get wiped out really fast if there's money at play and other power players. But also we need clear business incentives aligned with funders, aligned with business model, and with corporate governance structures. This is hard, of course, where the prestige and scale of investments of the venture capital are the one being sought after. But I think there is a movement emerging, and it's not only about the big tech employees that are organizing to exert pressure of leadership, which is also super important, but there are movements like the platform cooperative movement or steward ownership that I will mention in a moment, and of course there is the ZebrasUnite movement. Just a couple of sentences about how it all started. These are the 4 founder super women from the US who started it all. A couple of years ago, they are all entrepreneurs. They have their own companies, and they just exactly fell into this trap or into this like vacuum in between not wanting to be or not defining themselves as a social enterprise entirely on a non-profit, but also the way they operated and they wanted to lead their company wasn't exactly aligned with what the VC funders in the environment were looking for. So they were struggling with getting any investment. They were struggling in following all the rules, like how you have to stand, how you can show no vulnerability, which business models are being prioritized when applying for funding. And they thought, okay, we can't be there alone. We need to put something out there. And they put out a manifesto. This is, by the way, a screenshot of the New York Times article that I found also when researching. It was a very impressive article, and I really like the headline. And they put this manifesto out in a Medium article, and they called it Zebras Fix What Unicorns Break, where they put like a different kind of culture in a position to the existing unicorn one, a zebra one. Because zebra, and I think it's a really nice metaphor that they found for it, zebra is real as opposed to unicorns, who are a fantasy creature. And there are just 2 stripes on a zebra, the black and white, standing for purpose and for money and for profit. And one of the principles of a zebra company is that you don't sacrifice one for another. So you don't sacrifice the purpose for the profit, but you also don't sacrifice the profit for the purpose. So you need to kind of like think in this dual way. And this is, I believe, also what the economy of the future actually really needs. And here is a screenshot of the manifesto. I encourage you to check it out. also more in detail. It's just putting like unicorns and zebra next to each other, and you can say the zebra is more about sustainability, actual profitability, instead of like investing a lot of money without a functioning business model. It's about collaboration and that much competition with others, about creating an ecosystem around you. It's about diversity and inclusion, the problems that I mentioned before, and not that much striving for an exit at all costs, but about being sustainable company. And one could, of course, ask, does every company need to be kind of a social impact company, right? And after all, there are already structures that support nonprofits, social entrepreneurship networks, and so on. But I would argue that today's most mundane technologies impact our lives in a much deeper way. It shapes how we communicate, how we pay, how we vote, how we move around the city. It's everywhere. So kind of the internet's part of our social fabric. So if the technology and the business fueled by it is becoming part of almost like a public, what used to be a public infrastructure, the question is also, shouldn't we also change and adjust the structures for the online economy runs on? I believe that in this way, every tech is social impact tech, and we actually need a systemic change. And we just can't face the challenges ahead of us with the systems or with this like one single mind solution that prevails these days. So if we wanted to change the status quo, right, towards solving the problems I outlined, how would we approach it? And I think there are several elements in the way online companies and tech companies are constructed, and most companies as well. And the models can be tweaked in different ways. And all of these elements influence each other, right? And I created here, I played around with maybe it's familiar to you if you're in a business. I call that business canvas, where we need to like normally like fill out what's your business model, what's your users, what's your marketing, and so on. And I put these like different elements here, which I think are crucial to thinking and to bring about real change. And it's of course about the funding, from whom does it come, and which bias and obligation does it create. It's about the business model, of course, is it sustainable. It's about the ownership, who controls the company. How it's acquired, how it's distributed. It's about the governance, how do you make decisions within the company, and it's about the ecosystem, who can actually help you. And there are, as I said, there's a movement, different movements emerging, and they're around the world, but also in Germany here. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples what wonderful people are doing already out there to change the status quo. And to show that there are, as Alex mentioned, these alternatives out there. So the platform cooperatives movement, as I mentioned, of Nathan Schneider, it's also present here. The co-ops in Germany, it's called Genossenschaft. And it's about, they call the Internet of Ownership, and it brings democracy to the online economy. It's where the digital platforms are designed to provide a service, sell a product, and they are collectively owned and governed by the people who depend on it and who participate in it. So examples could be, for example, like Uber drivers. All drivers are organizing in co-ops, designing their own taxi apps. All photographers are pulling together to offer their work for fair prices on the platform where they're in charge. Here, it's an example from the US, a startup called Savvy, a co-op, where it's bringing patients and patients' insight together with medical research institutes. And this co-op is co-owned by the patients, and they actually profit from offering the insights about their medical story to the research institute who actually pay for it. There's another example here from around the corner, from Berlin, where I am. Colima2, it's a co-op of food delivery drivers who, I don't know if you're aware, when Deliveroo decided to shut down the business in Germany and leave Germany, these people were just left without the job, and they just put together and said, like, let's start a co-op. Let's start a company that will be a little bit different, that will be co-owned by us. And this was a couple of months ago, and they are still standing and running. They have like a bigger and bigger pool of restaurants they're working with, and they actually work as a co-own and profit from it as a collective. So kind of paving the way. Then we also have the steward ownership legal framework, which is championed by the Purpose Foundation. They're here in Berlin, but they're also active in the US, I think expanding more. This, I'm a big fan, I always say I'm a big fan of what they do. It is an alternative way to approach ownership and governance as well. Opposite to the prevailing model, the steward-owned businesses are governed by people who are directly involved in operations or mission of the business. So profits are either reinvested in the company or donated to philanthropic causes. And the steward-owned companies can't be bought, sold, or inherited. And they can take investment, but the dividend rights are separate from voting rights. So they can't really come to the board meeting and change completely the course of the company. I think it's a really clever legal framework. I also encourage you to check it out in detail if you're interested in such a solution for your company. There's already several big companies who did that. One example is the Berlin-based Kasia, the search engine that plants trees. They talked to the investors. The investors that they had before agreed to give up their voting rights, and they transitioned into the steward-owned company, and they're very happy with it. Stewarding the mission to protect our environment. And then, of course, there is funding, right? That has an enormous impact on business and economy. And here we also have a couple of examples of what's happening already in Germany and in Berlin. There are alternatives. One just recently launched called Conscious Growth by Julia Profeta Johansson. It is a revenue-based financing, so financing that doesn't take any equity from the funders, but gives them money and waits till the moment till they have an actual revenue and till they're profitable to pay back the investors according to the agreed one rules. Another company of the same kind is Uplift One, also not taking any equity. We also have impact investors, more and more. Here is one example of a Ragnarsson. It's a small company, design company in Berlin that is very profitable, and they decided to start investing the angel investment in companies they believe in, but they believe in a way that they are also impactful for our societies. And I think they focus on agriculture in particular. And I think one could ask also, what are the incentives for investor and funding to do that, to invest in impact or Zebras companies? But what we've seen already, what happened with privacy, at least, there is more and more people creating demand and actually being interested in how companies operate and which impact they have on not only on individualized, but also on the society as a whole. And according to a Cisco survey, 70% of organizations that invested in privacy say they are seeing benefits in every area of their business in form of competitive advantage, agility, and improved company attractiveness to investors. That is a question, that is an example for privacy, because it's a topic that's been talked about for a long time. There is more and more consciousness and awareness about this, and I think we need to expand this to many other issues that are just crucial for our society, such as social justice and so on. That worked, I think, really well in the green sector. There's a lot of investors who are actually looking at sustainability. We need more of that, but this is also a good example to follow. And another part is, of course, the business model, and that is kind of the key to how the business makes money, how it operates, and how it appears to the customers. And as I said, more and more customers actually care. for the impact and how the business operates. And here I wanted just to bring the examples of the Tomorrow Bank. I think they were as a guest at the Waterkant Festival a couple of days ago. A bank that brands itself as a zebra, which is great. It's I think the most popular zebra in Germany right now. And it's a bank that believes they can change the banking world in a way that the money that they actually hold for their customers, it's not being invested in the next coal-fired power station, but they finance renewable energy, social projects in the global south, and offset a lot of carbon. They also started a project around global microloans and plan much more. So they're trying like to flip this whole paradigm in banking by attracting customers who actually care about what happens to their money. And by being customers to the bank, they also know that they're investing in sustainability and in socially aware projects. Another example is Ecoligo, as a company that we had as a guest in one of our Berlin ZebrasUnite meetups. They are a very successful company as well, and they enable businesses in emerging markets to use clean energy. They offer a solar as a service solution and make it easy for businesses in the developing world to go green and lower their energy costs. And the projects are funded by through crowd investing, and they enable impact-driven individuals to fight the climate crisis with their investments. They're expanding. They are already in 4 countries, and they're profitable. So it works. And then, of course, we have the ecosystem part. And this is a screenshot from our 4th meetup of the ZebrasUnite Berlin. I started the chapter at the end of last year, of November. We had 2 meetings in person. It was great. In the beginning, it was just 10 people. Right now, we have between 70 and 100 registrations for each meetups. Meetups are virtual right now, of course, in the COVID times. And people are really attracted to this idea, to exactly this like gap in between the social entrepreneurship and like the hardcore startup world. We in this meetup here, we had a really great conversation. We invited Astrid Scholz, who is the co-founder of ZebrasUnite in the US. We invited Achim Hansen from the Purpose Foundation. We also had Ramona Liberov, who is a Sustainable Development Goals impact investor. And we all had a conversation about like how can we move this field of investing in zebra-like companies in Germany. Why is it hard and what has to be done? We have a website called zebras.berlin, where I always upload all the recording and the audio files from our meetups, so you can listen in and see what's been said. So we're trying to build a network of like-minded people and connect those who are already doing something. And there's like a lot of people, as I mentioned, just a couple of examples who are convinced that we need to rebuild the economy and who are doing something. And we want to make sure that they meet each other. So for example, after this meetup, our speakers actually were really encouraged to later on like continue conversation among each other. And I know that the founder of Conscious Growth, Julia, then got in touch with Achim and so on. So there is like a network building aspect to the movement, of course, as well. And if we also want to support efforts to advise policymakers of the need of the change, so that's also part of the ecosystem. So there are meetups, but also what I would like to draw your attention to is this marvelous book by 2 entrepreneurs from Berlin. It's called Starting a Revolution. It's Naomi Ryland and Lisa Jaspers. They wrote I would almost call it like a Bible for the zebra entrepreneurs. They were going through the same kind of internal journey that they felt like they don't fit into this, the model of VC, and it just felt wrong to them. Naomi went through this process, and she just didn't feel well about it. And then they thought like, okay, we need different role models, we need different advisors. So they did some research, and they reached out to several very inspirational female entrepreneurs to talk about like how do they run their businesses. And they found out like really great examples of alternatives, not only in terms of funding, but also in terms of like leadership, which kind of leader you want to be, how do you recruit people, how do you make sure it's diverse, the so-called new work principles, who does it work for and who not. It's like how to run a good company that aligns with your values and with your purpose. So this book is available now in English. I think it's going to come out in German in summer. It's great, it's packed with advice, and I think it also is a great example of how you contribute to build the ecosystem by replicating these good examples and these good models of how to do things a bit differently. And last but not least, we have also accelerators. We have the Imagine 2030 Mobility Accelerator put together by Motion Lab and SharkBite. They brand themselves also as Zebras, also became friends, and they, with the support of the city of Berlin, they made some money available and also a lot of resources for young entrepreneurs who would like to change something in the area of reinventing mobility, but also at the same time kind of adhering to the principles championed by the Zebras. So they even put it on their website there. So something's definitely moving. Yeah, so if you would like to explore more, this is just like, beginning in a little bit of an overview of what's happening. We have much bigger plans. And if you would like to explore more of these possibilities, if you're a activist, a researcher, a funder, or a founder, and you would like to find out more, explore these possibilities a bit more with us, you can join us. I put together this humble website at zebras.berlin, where you can find channels, how to join our Telegram group, how to subscribe to our newsletter. And this network is getting stronger, and we hope to offer more alternatives, more viable, concrete alternatives for people out there, and support entrepreneurs of different stripes. And the ZebrasUnite headquarters in the US, they also organize themselves as a cooperative, which we'll be probably part of, a member of, and we are currently thinking about how to broaden these structures also for Germany, so that more and more entrepreneurs can become members and can get access also to the offerings for Zebras. And if you want to connect with me and have a chat, I'm very easy to find on Twitter under the handle @Kasia Odrozek. All right, thank you. That's it. I hope my internet connection was on all the time.
Yes, you were good to hear. Like we had some problems with your video. Okay. But kind of we put it still inside of the presentation, and so you were super clear to hear, and your slides were pretty clear, so this is good. Okay. Could you now try to stop sharing your screen, that we could see you again, and then I think the connection gets better. Yeah, perfect. Now you're back again. Thanks. Super nice. Yeah, I think that there were so many questions in the chat while you were talking, so let's try to go through it. So first of all, there's a question from Anne. She's saying, first of all, she loves it, that the whole new concept, and she's asking you, how can one bring the zebra thinking into already existing unicorn companies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had this question already before, like the big one and the big tech. I mentioned the tech organizing part. I think this is already a bit happening, and maybe not that much, like they're not calling it Zebras, but people, and including employees of big companies such as Google or Amazon and so on, like feel on just the recent developments also in the US, the Facebook employees as well, who started to be more vocal about how they don't like what's happening within the company and the decisions that are being made there that impact millions of people. I think that needs to come from the people who feel that there needs to be a change, but of course they need to be big enough so that the leadership is affected, and then the change and the decision making and the actual change will come from people who are able to make these decisions. So I don't have like a silver bullet here that how we change the world. If I knew, I would start doing it. But I think it's already happening in terms of demand, and what big companies and unicorns pay attention to is good talent and good workforce, right? So if they start, and I think it started happening already. I see a couple of articles about it. If they start having trouble of getting like really good workers, developers, marketers, and so on, they will start thinking, okay, maybe there is demand out there for different ways to run business. We need to do something. But yeah, there is still a really long way, because money rules the world still, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I think this is really a good motivator to say you want to have the best minds out there, and please change yourself that you became adaptable, for this bright one. So this, I think it's a really good motivator for them. So there's another question from Viola, and she's asking, how can we measure new Zebras indicators? How can we measure purpose? And is there already a system that is doing and valuing that?
Yeah, that's always so difficult. I even know this from my Mozilla work, where we have the company part and the foundation part, where we address, we're trying to impact long-term goals, I don't know, either it's like activism or changes and so on. And that sometimes it's a little bit difficult if it's not money, it's not quantifiable or something long-term, like to capture the goals. As far as I know, there are attempts to create impact measuring networks. I know that my colleague Evgeny Koris, who is a leader of a new Mittelstand movement here in Germany, he mentioned something to me. I could dig it out and pass the link. But I think this is something also that you need to work with, but in terms of also theories of change. It's something that people use a lot in the companies, like how do you want to change and how do you want to impact the world ahead of you, and then how do you trace it back to long and short term goals, and then trying to break it down into KPIs and so on, but of a different kind, always keeping in mind that numbers don't always tell the whole story. So I think there are different attempts here and there, and this needs to happen. This work needs to happen also with investors, I think, with people who fund, because they need to see if they invest in impact, right? They invest in a company that has a different purpose, both profit and purpose. They need to have also a way to, if there is not much money coming back, they need to at least see that you're doing good work in the purpose area. So I think this needs to be developed in concert with every stakeholder.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then there's another question from Karen. She's asking, how can I as a private person see which company is a Zebra company? Are there any marks, and is there maybe a label in production right now that there will be, that there might be something in the future as a kind of labeling process? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about it myself, because it's movement coming slowly together, and we talk about principles, and there are efforts or organizations like B Corp. I don't know if you know about this. They have an actual certification, and that exists already, right? And there's a legal structure about it. With ZebrasUnite, it's more about the change and shift in the culture and how people think about it, and it's more of an umbrella term for a lot of things that are actually happening there. That being said, so we kind of slow about it. Although I'm a lawyer by education, I have to say myself, I sometimes miss having oh yeah, this is the definition, is this a zebra? You're not a zebra because this and that. We have this manifesto, and I think manifesto is to be used as a guideline as we investigate a company. And we're not labeling companies yet. Or I don't know if there are any ideas to do that, maybe further down the road. But there's more and more talking about it, and meetings and conferences like this one, where also companies hear about it, and the next time they start talking about it themselves, and they kind of trying to show how what's the elements in the way they run a business that make them a zebra. However, what we need to also be aware of, and that's something that the Purpose Foundation was also talking about, it's so-called purpose washing, because like, it's very attractive to jump on the wagon and present yourself to the customers as somebody who's purpose driven and the zebra, while when you look at take a closer look, and that's not true because of the decision making, let's say, or like what is actually the incentives at play and how you treat your employees and so on. So for now, it's a movement, it's an umbrella term, it's an attempt to shift the culture, but I also think that I know about efforts to start mapping this kind of zebra-like companies and zebra-like ecosystem, and that if that will be successful, I think that might help us define it a little bit more and make it more recognizable, just like similar to the startup map, Berlin startup map I showed you. Maybe we can have something like that, like a search engine also for zebra companies. Let's see, TBD.
Yeah. So what do you think, like which platform might publish it first? Because there's another question coming from JJ. He says, I'd like to buy products from zebras. How do I know which companies are good to buy stuff from? So like what kind of website should we all follow that we will inform first when there's a new zebra coming up or something?
Yeah, I think we need to create, that sounds like we need to create such a website, and we need to, which is a lot of work, of course, because of this definitional problems, let's say, problems or like opportunities. But I think doing a little bit of research and informing yourself and looking at how the company, as I said, like what is it funded by, who are the people who run it, what is actually the purpose, is it sustainable? Sometimes you can get this information even by looking at the website, but being careful about it. But well noted that something like this would be welcome, and yeah, maybe something will come soon.
Great. And maybe one last question from Rudolf. He's asking, do you have any ideas how to make sure that zebra companies don't get outcompeted by unicorn companies?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're being outcompeted right now, right? As we say, most the ones who are in power are the big unicorn ones. I think there are like different angles that we need to look at here. Like, as I said, like there is a movement, people are start moving, talking about it, so that you're more aware that there is a need for something like that, and there is demand coming from people. And then on the other hand, we also have regulation, right? Like regulation and governments and the incentives that they create. And that when you think about privacy, for example, the GDPR regulation changed a lot. It isn't perfect, but it changed a lot, and it gave some tools, and it kind of forced companies to think about privacy more than they did before. And it's spreading all around the world, having replications. So I hope that the same will start happening in terms of regulations, always like slower than tech, but still it's coming, in terms of environment, for example, or social justice and so on, and the impact on our societies, on community health and so on. Because as I mentioned in our presentation, I think this corona crisis and so on makes it also pretty visible that we need more of that, not just following money.
Great. And maybe like one personal last question for me, because we love so much to work with Mozilla. Also, like Kathleen Berger was here last year, and we have quite tight contact to you. Would you call Mozilla a zebra as well?
Yeah, yes, of course. I think so. Yeah, definitely. We are at the model kind of I even gave a talk at the event of the Purpose Foundation a couple of months ago about the steward ownership, because when you look at Mozilla, this is basically what we are in terms of ownership. The Mozilla Foundation, we don't have shareholders that we need to pay out dividends to. We are owned by a foundation, by the Mozilla Foundation, and so that creates completely different incentives to act. We have a mission that we are true to, and people love working for Mozilla, a really good talent, and there is a reason for it. So I think yes, we are a zebra.
Super nice. Yeah, so I would definitely also recommend all the viewers who are watching us check out all the products of Mozilla. Like, for instance, we just installed, as we mentioned earlier, the Mozilla Hub here at Waterkant, where you can go virtually throughout our hall. And if you check out waterkant-hub.sh, then you could also like see this chat that we're having right now in this hub, and check out the potentials, and everything is kind of complete without any let's say privacy issues. I think it's privacy safe, and this is also a very cool thing to have, and also quite without a barrier to for for people who are new in VR. This is super nice as well. Yes, so unfortunately we have come to an end, and kind of we hit the 45-minute mark. So thank you so much, Kasia, for sharing your delightful insights. And I think also the chat told us that there's a lot of interest out there. So we should definitely check in once again, maybe at least in 1 year or maybe earlier, just to see if there are new zebras coming, if there are some first maps out there. And I think, the topic is still getting hotter. So this is a good message, I'd say.
Good. Let's fight together.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much too.